So what's the big problem with wealth creation? How do people like us, who didn't inherit a boatload of money, who are investing and building wealth from our own blood, sweat and tears, how do we invest in a way that gives us remarkable results and become financially free before retirement age? I don't know about you, but I am sick of hearing from wealth gurus and experts who don't walk their own talk and prescribe strategies that are a one-size-fits-all approach. For self-made people like you and me, I'm here to tell you that you don't need to be superhuman or already wealthy to reach financial freedom earlier than 65.
My name is Salena Kulkarni and I'm a passionate investor, but with a difference. I spend half my time running a community for wealthy entrepreneurs looking to reach financial freedom in 3 to 5 years using exclusive real estate deals that deliver consistent, predictable cash flow. The other half of my time, I support motivated young adults who want to get started on their wealth building journeys. I've been a chartered accountant and investor in the trenches for over 25 years, but I didn't come from money. So I want to help those who want to be self-made, master the fundamentals and fast track their financial freedom. I've had all the cuts and bruises in the past, and now in this podcast, I want to share real life experiences on what has worked, what hasn't worked, and how you can take action that will set you apart from 99% of other investors so that you can get the results you want faster. Hi guys, welcome to the podcast. In this episode, I actually want to talk a little bit about the idea of loss. Loss is something that can profoundly impact many investors. Whether you lose $40, $400 or $4 million, the impact can be, in some cases, absolutely devastating. What I want to share with you today is some ideas for how to reframe the idea of loss in your mind so that you can actually put yourself in a situation where you are not negatively altered in terms of thoughts and beliefs, because these things can have far-reaching implications in terms of your future success. Where I'd love to start is a mentor of mine once told me that we are meaning-making machines. So, even though we are years, hundreds of centuries past the idea of survival or caveman survival, we cannot help but attach all this meaning to everything that happens to us. And this is very true, especially in the realm of money. When we have a loss, when loss occurs, as it does for most people who risk capital by investing at some point, it feels like a massive blow to our confidence. We make it mean something about who we are, about our abilities, about whether we should or shouldn't invest in the future. And it can be so powerful that in some cases it's not just a financial setback, it actually becomes this this personal crisis of confidence that affects us in so many ways. So what I've witnessed after coaching hundreds of people on this particular topic is that if we're not careful, these things can become quite cancerous in our psyche. And when doubt starts to creep in about who we are, how good we are, whether we should try something again, then we can sometimes become paralyzed. So the big question that I'm really kind of asking you to entertain is, how do you react to loss? Now, this was a question that I brought up at a recent mastermind that I had with some of my high net worth clients. And the funny thing is that you would assume that given that someone has, generated millions of dollars of wealth, that they would be very, indifferent, if you like, to the idea of loss. But in fact, the opposite is often true. And again, even if you're worth millions of dollars and you lose a very small amount of money, sometimes the pain from that can just be completely overwhelming, that it overshadows all the good things that you do. So really the big question I'm asking in today's podcast is, how do you react to loss? And this is maybe a reflection exercise. I do encourage you to go and sit down and think about this. Think about the last time you lost any money, how you felt about it, what you made it mean, and how does it influence you in terms of decisions that you make in the future. Now, if I kind of share a couple of stories with you, I think this might be useful. We are surrounded by this wisdom, and I call it wisdom because it's not really wisdom, but there's a common thread in modern culture which says that loss is to be avoided at all costs. Warren Buffett has been held up as kind of, quoting things like rule number 1 is never lose the money. Rule number 2 is never forget rule number 1. And, people have it's almost become this quote that's used ad nauseum, and people have mistakenly assumed that because he's saying that he's never had any losses. And the truth of the matter is this actually couldn't be further from the truth. So some of his big losses, if we kind of reflect on those, is in 2014 he invested in Tesco, and he then reflected later that was a huge mistake, and he lost about $444 million on that. Then he invested in Dexter Shoes, and he acquired it for $443 million. And, basically he made some mistakes with it, and the stock that he gave away in his own company to buy it would actually have been worth billions today. So again, he said that's just, one of the most monumental mistakes of his career. Then in the 1990s, he invested in US airlines, about $400 million. And again, he referred to that as one of his biggest mistakes for years and years. He bought shares in IBM for about $13.8 billion, and then sold off a significant portion in 2018 at a massive loss. He invested in Kraft Heinz and took a $3 billion write-off. So the list goes on and on and on and on. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because I think it's really important to note that even investors who we all edify as being top of their game still have massive challenges around their capacity to kind of navigate investing in a way that they never incur loss. So if you then expand that out, in almost every celebrated investor in the world, in terms of media and so forth, they have had sizable losses. In some cases, the loss has been so huge they've lost everything, and then they've had to come back from zero. So people like Carl Icahn, so he had a huge stake in Blockbuster that absolutely tanked. George Soros, he started Quantum Fund, and at the time had this huge exposure to Russia. And when the Russian financial crisis hit, he lost about $2 billion. Bill Ackman invested in Valiant Pharmaceuticals and lost about $4 billion when their stock tanked. And the list goes on and on and on. And the reason I'm sharing all this with you is I just want you to know that loss is natural. The real question and the real takeaway from today is, how has it affected you? Like, what hangover has loss given you? Because the truth is, loss hurts. I understand that. Whether we're talking about, an investment portfolio, or whether you're talking about playing a game of poker, losses do an absolute number on our psyche. Loss aversion is where, basically the pain of loss psychologically is twice as powerful, or more than that, as the pleasure of any wins. But here's the real punchline to this topic. The goal of investing isn't to never experience loss. So I'll say that again. The goal of investing isn't to never experience loss. That's a double negative there. So the goal isn't to kind of have this flawless track record and never experience a loss. And what really smart, deca millionaires that I deal with, that, who are really top of their game, say to me is, if you're not losing at all, you're probably not risking enough, and therefore you're not gaining enough either. So we all get that the real objective is to ensure that your wins outweigh your losses over time. But what I've heard from many people is it's not about avoiding the setbacks. I mean, obviously no one wants to lose money, but we can't make that the focus. It's about mastering the art of the comeback. And so that is the thought I want to leave you with today. What happens with most people is they tend to, when they experience a loss, they sweep it under the carpet. They kind of either block it out of their mind, or it becomes this thing, that kind of insidious thing that kind of makes them, suspicious of every investment that they do. And I know in my own community of investors, there are people who have, as a result of a loss, as a result of not digesting that loss, they have given themselves cancer. They've had, major bouts of depression, mental anxiety. It has made them miss great opportunities later on that they could have made a whole lot of money on. And it's also, led them into investments which maybe didn't serve them. So it's really, really important. And I cannot stress this enough, that when you think about loss, when you think about losses you've had, when you experience losses, that you digest it. And one of the best ways to do that is to really look for, number one, the diagnosis of how did it come to be? Like, what were all the biases that maybe were in play that got in the way? And then the second part to this is you need to do the same thing when you have a win. When you have a win, it's equally as important to diagnose how that came to be. Was it luck? Was there actually astute due diligence and thinking that led you to that investment? Because when we start to get into the habit of reflecting on all the different moves that we make to build our wealth, then we can actually start to see patterns. Then we get to know ourselves better. And so therefore, then we can make better decisions in the future. So guys, I'm going to leave it there. I hope this is useful, and I can't wait to catch up with you on the next episode. Take care.
If you're feeling frustrated that despite doing everything right in the property investing playbook and you're no closer to financial freedom, then head on over to incosiwealth.com to learn more about how you can use alternative investments to catapult your investing income and blend strategies to shave decades off your timeline to financial freedom. See you on the next episode.